We are honored to provide you with a dignified way to be present, even from afar, to remember, reflect, and celebrate the life of a loved one. As we prepare to begin the stream, we ask you to take a moment to create a peaceful and respectful environment around you. Please switch your phone to silent or do not disturb mode. This helps you stay present without interruptions from calls or messages.
2.
Find a comfortable, quiet place to sit. Feel free to light a candle, hold a photo, or invite someone close to sit beside you. This is your moment to connect and remember. Our stream will begin shortly. You may see a short pause or holding screen before the ceremony begins. This is normal. Our team is working in the background to ensure everything runs smoothly. During the stream, we kindly ask you to keep background noise to a minimum. If you are watching with others, please speak in hushed tones. For the best viewing experience, ensure you are connected to a stable Wi-Fi network. If the video pauses or buffers, don't worry. You can refresh the page or wait a moment as it stabilizes. This service is not just about technology. It is about presence, memory, love. Whether you're in the next room or another country, your presence here matters. Thank you for trusting Muzukuru Funeral Streaming. We are with you to honor, remember, and connect. Welcome to Muzukuru Funeral Streaming.
Better than it has been at any time in the last 5 years.
Not taking too long to do.
Yeah. Russian. I'm just pretty anti the grafting thing. So we just going to go and pop.
You guys are far from home. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Trying to connect to the Wi-Fi.
Oh, just leave it for now. Once you guys focus on.
Hello, testing. Can you hear me? All hear me okay? This thing is built for a midget, sorry. Okay, we're going to make a start, and it's my... Sorry, just before I start, can I just remind everybody to make sure your cell phones are on silent? This is being live streamed, so we don't really want any interruptions. It's a sad day for Mutare, a sad day for the Holland family. But it's also a cause for celebration of the life of a remarkable man. And it's my privilege and honor, and thank you, Bridge, M, and Benji, and your families for asking me to speak on behalf of the family. On behalf of all of them, they extend a very warm welcome to you all, and their thanks for coming here today. To pay your last respects to a man who touched and enriched all of our lives. And many of you have come from afar. We really appreciate that. I just want to ask you to take a look around and see these most amazing, beautiful setting that we sit in under the big mahogany tree which is home to the giant eagle owls. And I can't think of a more fitting place that Keith would have wanted for this celebration to be held. I would like to mention a few people who would love to have been here, but have not been able to. And hopefully they will all be watching live on the stream. Keith's brother John and sister Judy. Benja's wife, Olga. My daughter, Brian, in Cape Town, sends so much love and wished she could be here. But you know she's here in spirit. I want to say, just to start with, to Bridget, Ems, and Benj, and I know today is a tough day for you all, but the last 6 to 9 months have really been an awful time. I know how all these tests and operations, and each time hoping for a good result, each time getting bad news, but yet you guys were there for Keith. You were so strong for him. You made sure that he didn't have to worry about arrangements. Excuse me. That he could just try and cope with the horrible treatment that he had to deal with. Yes, we all hoped for a miracle. It wasn't to be, sadly. But in his time of need, you were there for him. And Bridgie, you were amazing. I remember not once, but twice in these last few months when we spoke to Keith, and he just said he couldn't have done it without you. You were a saint. So if you can take some small comfort from that, but well done. And to you, Ems and Benj, the same. You know that Keith was so incredibly proud of you all. And, he loved you all so much. I'd also like to mention that Hollands, you guys pretty much didn't see Keith for the last 6 to 9 months, and you kept the show going. You kept everything running for him. It's not going to work. And again, I know the family are tremendously grateful to you all. Emmanuel, you called Keith the father to you all, and he was. And but it's appreciated how you handled the situation, so thank you. And then we're going to have special eulogies and from the family and from Mike and from Susie, but just on behalf of the Mutare community and the Hillside community. And by the way, I just love the picture of Keith. I mean, that is so Keith. I mean, Keith and I go back probably to when we were young boys, and he was in the company of his dad, Binks, and I was in the company of my dad at the Macheki and Headlands cattle sales. And they were grand occasions, and Binks sold Mombies to my dad, and it was all a lot of fun. But Binks had the same glint in his eye that Keith has there. Mischievous. And, yeah, in the bush, it's really appropriate. Yeah, we're going to miss Keith hugely here at Hillside. He was really in the fabric of this club for such a long time. And as Bridgie says, this was his altar, his Mecca, his happy place. We all remember watching Keith, how he loved to walk his dogs on the course. And if he wasn't walking his dogs, he was spotting birds, and he knew probably every bird that lives here. He could identify where the blue duiker were. And if he wasn't doing that, he was eradicating species like lantana that weren't supposed to be here. And if he wasn't doing that, he was playing lousy golf in his baggy trousers, his old clothes with his mates. And occasionally he had a good round, and that was something that really, really pleased him. But most of the time it was pretty awful. And then, of course, you know, on the deck, you know, Keith, that also was a place where he presided. You know, it's going to be hard to have a drink there and to socialize there and not have Keith there. It's really, really hard to come to terms with the fact that he's no longer with us. But his contribution to this club was huge. For as long as I can remember, Keith's vehicle, his car, was parked in either the chairman's or the president's park. And some would say he just wanted to have the park closest to the entrance. But that's not the case. Keith was not like other people who would sort of say somebody else can do it, or, you know. Keith, if there was a job to be done, Keith's hand went up. And he would do it. And whether it was a committee member or golf captain or chairman of the club or president of the club, which he was this year, Keith was there for Hillside. And we owe him a huge debt of gratitude because he steered the club over the last 20, 30, 40 years through some very turbulent and tricky times. And what we have here today is largely a measure of what he put into this club. So on behalf of all the Hillside community and the Mutare community, a very big thanks to him. I know it took time away from you, but it was special to his heart. And that reminds me of, if I may be permitted to just say a joke. I heard you, some of you may have heard it, but I think Keith would appreciate it. Little boy says to his grandpa, he says, "Grandpa, how many is a couple?" And his grandpa looks him in the eye and he says, "Well, if you're talking feet or shoes, it's 2. If you're talking beers or whiskey, it could be 8 or 9. Yeah, that was Keith. Not only Hillside, but Mutare Club, Casuals Club, you'll see we've probably got a cricket team here today, all wearing the Casuals tie. Keith loves his sport, whether it was tennis, he played bowls, he loved his cricket. Again, played pretty badly most of the time, but he loved it, and he was the heart and soul of our team. So he leaves a legacy. We know Keith. He was so impatient. He's probably up there telling me, "Look, you've said enough. It's time to step down," and it is. But I just want to say something about his heart. Keith, why we loved him is he was so transparent. He had this huge heart. He was so generous with his time and his money and any cause that, he was there. He was the first one to put his hand in his pocket or his hand up to do something. His heart was there, but it was worn right on his sleeve. There were no secrets with Keith. You knew exactly what was happening. He was so incredibly inquisitive. He wanted to know everything, and mostly he did know everything before anybody else. But yeah, as I say, we're going to miss him, and as I say, I've spoken enough. We really feel for the family, but what a legacy he has left us. What a tremendous legacy. So, Benj, if you can come up and give your eulogy to your pa.
Good afternoon, good morning. It's very moving to see all of you today. So many of you have come to join us in celebrating my father's life. I'll start by saying he was truly an original human being, someone who marched entirely to his own drum. He was a man of big contrasts, sometimes quick to anger, could be intimidating, but at the same time, as George said, he was incredibly kind and generous and always wore his heart on his sleeve. He loved Zimbabwe. He loved Mutare and Manicaland. He loved this community, and above all, he loved his family. I'll try to do him justice in the following words. Born in 1954 in Mutare, and he left us this year, he was privileged to be one of few who have spent their entire life in one place. He attended Eagle and then Plumtree School, and was a very proud old prenician. He had a brief, incomplete sojourn at UCT, where by all accounts he was very wild. I think the shackles of Plumtree were well and truly shaken off, and many times in the future this would be recounted to my sister and I by various parents of South African friends. Pam Golding's daughter once approached me at a fancy wedding in the Cape and recounted how my dad, as a student and apparently suitor, would arrive at the Golding estate with no shoes. During his youth, he played excellent sport, in particular cricket, and would often tell us about his young adult days opening the Bowling Ferrari Sports Club with Robin Jackman. On making his debut, Jackman, being very condescending, looked down his nose at the young fast bowler and told him, "Just keep the runs down." I believe he took a wicket with his first ball. Keith was sports obsessed, and even across oceans and time zones, he and I would keep religiously up to speed, what's happening in all global rugby, cricket, and football scores. It's been very challenging over the last few weeks during the World Cup and recent rugby, the realization that he was no longer there to WhatsApp back. Be that as it may, after a successful stint on the tobacco auction floors and a career he could have pursued, he came back to Mutare to join J.S. Holland in 1981. This is how many of you really know him. Keith Holland of Hollands, founded in 1911, still going strong today. He was a proud third generation to run the business, and during his tenure, he successfully navigated incredibly challenging economic times and effectively pivoted the business from a rural agricultural focus to an urban real estate bias. This is how I grew to know my dad as a man. Long road trips across Manicaland, cattle sales in Headlands and Chipinge, evaluation in Chimani, equipment auction in Penalonga, a far-shore goat sale near Hot Springs, talking about everything and nothing. With the Hollands team, many here today, always in tow. Every corner had a story, every growth point a general dealer he needed to see, every district a farmer to meet for tea or a beer. He loved every inch of Manicaland, and you couldn't help but fall in love with all of it too. very evocative days, the smell of a cattle sale, a roadside beer, a bacon and egg roll. Anyone who knew him was amazed at how deep and wide his network was. He took time to know the little people and how they lived their lives, but he also knew the big people in Zimbabwe. My father had friends across our entire society, all walks of life, all ages, all races. He looked for the best in everyone, and that was how he judged a man. And at all times to anyone, he was authentically Keith Holland, and that authentic experience was greatly respected by many. Sometimes, something that he often said that always stuck with me was to be interesting and interested. Many visiting youth to Mutare would be charmed at how he took an interest in their lives, their families, their careers. And he loved the Hollands team. He felt personally responsible for them, a family extension, doing the best he could always. And for this community too, a third-generation chairman of Mutare Club, a president of Hillside, a course his grandfather laid out on horseback, clearing lantana, planting trees, walking the golf course twice a day, with his dogs every day for 40 years. One of his sacred rituals was his Wednesday and Saturday golf, which brought him great enjoyment in later years. And the man himself, like I said, a man of contrast, would absolutely lose it over a mechanical problem with a boat, or we had to wait with no clear timeline. But he would also cry at the airport, watching a movie, watching children's sport, at a wedding. He could be reliably counted on to cry at any family event. And he was a wonderful father, deeply involved in our lives, would do anything for us, generous with his time, generous with his love. We could not ask for more. Later on, he became a doting grandfather to his 4 grandchildren, Harry, Gray, Daniel, and Dominic. And through them, his legacy will continue. My mother was his rock, and Dad always said that he wanted to go first, as he wouldn't survive without her. I think he would be secretly relieved at the outcome. And though the final 2 years were tough, they spent every day together and were a tightly knit team. He thoroughly enjoyed pottering around his garden. A large man, delicately pruning roses. He loved his animals, was incredibly gentle and caring with his cats and dogs. As many of you know, a strong case of undiagnosed ADHD. Could not sit still, not good at details, a big picture thinker, completely unmaterialistic. My mom would continually throw out his old decrepit clothes. He would go behind her back, speak to the maids, find out where the clothes were, and they would slowly return to his wardrobe. As a family, we spent wonderful times in wild places, chasing birds, fishing, camping, Mozambique beach holidays. We loved the bush. He loved the bush too. But his apex moment, if you knew him well enough, was his first whiskey at the end of the day. He would go anywhere, no matter how uncomfortable, as long as he had a decent whiskey and, more importantly, ice. And to some, he was known as Iceman. That was a key requirement in his life, whiskey and ice at the end of each day. In his final hours, which were very trying, all he wanted to do was return home. In a not 100% lucid state, he was anxious to get back to Mutare, to garden, he told us. I poured him a big whiskey, which helped matters. We will always miss him. Keith Holland, an original human being.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've written something for my dad. It's called Shoes. Damp shoes sprinkled with grass shavings. Holy garments, sweaty odor. It's a giveaway. Where have we been? 18 holes, 9 holes, then no holes. Buckling metal bridge, dogs galloping. Grandchildren navigating strained leashes and laughing. Grandpa up ahead. your tall, straight, patient outline, the odd piece of local news shared between us, otherwise companionable silence, twin spots skitting through the undergrowth. We left the binos again. Moon rock sunset, Malawi shandy to dusky skies, camping chair occupied and bear in hand, peace in the land. Off to entangle some breamfish, a puttering boat engine, then not. Back to the workshop we go. Fire pit crackling, lions rumbling. I'm sure you haven't changed your shirt in days, Dad. Shrug. Ding, ding, ding on my phone. Did you arrive safe? Harry, cricket score, please. How many mills on the farm? Any hail, God forbid. Some legal advice, please. Now quiet. Ice machine stuttering, tinkle of ice in the amber whiskey tumbler. Grandchildren fighting for prized position on Grandpa's couch. Your uncontained joy at their company. Smudgy specks, a snack, and the spectator not far away. In the morning, a trail of rust crumbs. Your garden secateurs yielding fresh roses. Thank you, darling, but please take your shoes off inside. Greeting, greeting, shake hands, a man of the people and the community, treading squarely in the footsteps of the Holland lineage. Your hands squeezing cheeks before a bristly moustache kiss. Your genuine delight in most. Your undisguised impatience with the few. Caustic male banter at the deck, a tabletop of glasses and cans, and the warming satisfaction of good company. Yet, Mum was your person, the example of marriage in its rugged, tested form, a river of love, rising and gaining. And in those bedside times, his comforter, crutch, and best friend. 1 in a million, and you will never know how much I love you, you would always say to her. Indeed. Excuse me. Doctors, doctors, doctors. I'm fine, I'm fine. The 4 of us together again at the end. Bye, Dad. Until we meet again. I love you. But we will carry you in Harry's medium-paced deliveries, long legs, and love of the little creatures. In Gray's clumsiness, humour, and boyish camaraderie. And Danny and Dominic's chattiness and fizz. And I will carry you, Dad, in every wet shoe.
Why are all you Hollands so short? I'm not quite concerned about this. Maybe that's a little bit better. Bridgie, thank you for asking me to say a few words. Of course, Benji has said much of what I was going to say anyway, so my apologies. This is a sort of a thread, a little bit of Keith's life, and my life, and mine and Helen's life, along with him. And this all started, the story, back in the Rinderpest. And that's an expression that we often use of a long time ago. But this really was true, because it was in the Rinderpest in the sort of 1896 to 1905 period, and all the cattle, the national herd had been wiped out here in Rhodesia. And there was going to be a lot of hard work to re-establish it. Well, in 1910, there was a fellow called Johnny Holland who left from Port Elizabeth to arrive in Beira, of all places. And this was going to be his big adventure and his dream. And so he set off on his bicycle, and he ended up here in Mutare. And of course he set about his auctioneering business, re-establishment of the national herd. And this Johnny was actually from a herd of 11 children himself. His son Binks, of course, followed, taking what was now established as J.S. Holland forward. And we've heard all about all the work that he did throughout Zimbabwe in the agricultural sector. Binks and his very fearsome wife, Leela, also set about having children. But thank goodness they only had 3. I just can't imagine 6 or 7 of Keith's siblings. That would have been a big problem. The first born to Leela was Judy. Judy, I know you're on the end of one of those cameras there, sitting in the UK. And then 4 years later came brother John. And John also is at the end of that camera over there in Canada. And then, as was Leela's way, because there was no hurrying her, along came Keith another 4 years later. I first came across the Holland clan in 1959. And that was when my parents thought that shirking and being a fairly unpleasant little boy at Avondale Junior School, that they needed to change matters. And they sent me up to Eagle School up here in the Vumba. And it was a most wonderful experience for me. And it was where I then met, the same year as me, a very nice young boy who did befriend me and was very kind to me because I didn't know too much about boarding. And his name was John Holland. And John and I were good mates at Eagle. Never met his little brother Keith, because you didn't talk to little brothers and you didn't speak of them. They were the squacks. Well, of course, what happens is that when you leave junior school, you disappear off to various senior schools of your choice. And of course, John and Keith both went off to Plumtree. And I lost track of them. I never saw hide nor hair of Keith or any of the Hollands for years and years. Kind of after school, and Keith was actually quite bright, and he did very well. And of course, he went off down, as you've heard, to Cape Town, where he didn't do very well. There were so many distractions, and he never completed his studies. And it was down there that my wife Helen, of course, became firm friends with Keith. Keith came back and did his national service here, where he was with the support unit. And once he completed his national service, he joined the tobacco industry, where he was a buyer, I think, on the floors, and he went all the way through the tobacco industry, knowing so many people, so many farmers who had the utmost regard and respect for Keith. And although I've tried not to make any mention of many names in my talk today, because there are so many here who are friends and should really be personally mentioned, but it was there while he was in the tobacco industry that he made a lifelong friendship with Lyle Green. Lyle and Rosie have driven today from Gonorrhoea, and well done for being here. Keith was just ever so fond of you, Lyle. So Keith went through the cycle during the 70s of 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. He was still with the support unit and obviously still with the tobacco industry. But it was, I think it was, if I can just check it, it was in 1979. He had met Bridgie Holland, Bridgie Belang, in fact, and Bridgie decided, I think very quickly, that enough was enough about this Holland, who was a bit of a rogue, drank too much. So she marched him off to Bulawayo, where she wed him. So I think she proposed to him. I think she did, just said, Holland, you're mine now, this is it. However, in 1981, as you heard, Keith and Bridget came back to settle in Mutare. And obviously it was partially to help Binks, with the business. Excuse me. But I think you would probably know those people who knew him in those days, that he was a chronic asthmatic. And he came to Mutare to escape the dust, the tobacco dust. And then it was only in 1984 when once more I came across Keith. And I'd been transferred down here. Helen had said, let's get hold of this guy Holland. He's an estate agent down there, and maybe he can find us a house or somewhere to live. So we contacted Keith, and he said, come down, I'll set up some viewing for you. And we did. We came down and we met at Keith and Bridget's home up there in Nut Hill early in the morning, and he said, come and have a cup of tea, and then we'll go around and have a little look at some houses. Of course, we arrived there. It just so happened that Bridget had set her eyes on wanting to live in what I would call an old Rhodesian home down here in the avenues, and they were going to sell their house. So Keith was very quick to say, what do you think of this house? And of course, Helen said, I just absolutely love this place. It's absolutely marvelous. Well, about 10 minutes later, we shook hands and drove back to Harare. So, Keith had done very well out of that sale, I can tell you. I think he said, how much are you prepared to pay for a house? And I told him the Harare prices, which are completely above the Mutare price. He said, that's a fair price. You can have that. But Keith and I became really good friends during that period. And, of course, Bridget and Helen were inseparable. We brought up our little children together with all your and our old Mutare mates here. And what a wonderful, wonderful community. During the 80s, Keith was carving out a name for himself, as you've heard. If you were in agriculture, you knew Keith. If you were in property, you knew Keith. He was so passionate about his work, wasn't he? He just, everything was passion, passion, passion. Not just about his work, he was passionate, as you heard, about his sport. He was a wonderful cricket player, tennis player, and as you so rightly said, he was a pretty awful golf player as well. But, aside from those passions, the one thing I learned very early on, in those early days when our little piccaninnies were like this, Keith's biggest passion was, in fact, his two children, Benji and Emma. You were forever in his conversations. In fact, there were times when he was quite painful about it. And you were absolutely center stage in his life. And he was the man who, every time he came to Harare, the first thing he would say is, how's Dave, or how's Crick, or how's Katie, and how are the grandchildren? He was always interested in others, and particularly the families and the children. And that was an amazing thing about Keith. He would go on to talk about all the other things, but he had to get the how are you and how are your family out the way first. We left and went back to Harare, and we remained very good friends with the Hollands. And they became really holiday companions of ours. And we did some really nice, some really, really nice holidays. Well, the one thing the Hollands never did was to go on holiday to exotic places. I think once we went to Zanzibar, which is hardly exotic. But because they just wanted to go to the bush. They just wanted to stay here in Zimbabwe and go to the Zambezi River, and we had that wonderful trip there, Bridgie, if you remember so well, and all the trips to Gonorozo, Wankie, and it was where Keith and Bridget were most happy. You've heard about Keith and he just was so scruffy in the bush. His shirt hung out, he had this silly little cap on, and his canvas shoes. He really was quite unbelievable. And his binoculars around his neck. He was disheveled. In fact, he was just not a pretty sight at all. And Keith had this thing about binoculars. They were always hanging around his neck all the time, and he was always looking. He was such a good birder. I noticed after a while, Keith would go to bed at night, as he always did before everybody else. And he'd go to bed, and we might be sitting out in the veranda at Shishaki, for example, and you could see Keith under the net, and he had his binoculars around his neck. You know, and then word has it that he would take them off, and as he turned out the light, he'd kiss them goodnight, and, you know. But he had to have them next to him just in case a lion came in the room and he could have a quiet look at it or something. But he took his binoculars to bed. And, those travelling days were very special and have been very special with, of course, Bill and Jane Clegg were always with us. And of course, Pete and Sue Caminada, who, of course, couldn't be with us today. I'd just like to make a very special mention of Pete Franklin, who's here today. The family are especially happy to have you here, Peter. Peter Franklin, he's part of the Franklin family. Those of you who don't know, old man Binks Holland and Leela was a Franklin, and that's the association. So cousin Pete is here, and he loved you dearly, Pete. He always spoke of you. You were very special, and he referred to you as his brother from another mother. And we're very, very happy, and I know Bridgie's very happy to have you here today. And so I must say to you, Keith, on behalf of all your friends gathered here today, all your friends who are on the other end of those cameras, and for those who couldn't make it, on behalf of all the staff, the loyal staff of J.S. Holland, you will always be remembered, and you will always be respected, Keith. And I'd like to say on behalf of your sister, Judy, and brother John in the UK and Canada, I'm giving Keith your goodbyes. This cancer bit him badly, John and Judy, and he suffered. And he's in a pain-free place now, and obviously much happier. And of course, I too must say my farewells to my old Shamwari Keith Christopher Keith. You were so much larger than life, Keith. And I loved you dearly because you laughed and you cried. And we cried and laughed together. And you know, Emma, the most I ever saw him cry was when Bugs proposed to you in Ghana Reserve that time. And Keith came back, and he was all in tears and emotional and nose running and so on, and he cried his eyes out. He was just so happy. I didn't think it was appropriate to say Bugs was a bit of a scabanger, but anyway. And of course, when we were at your wedding up in Vic Falls, Benji, you know, at the back there was, as you said earlier, you know, with his heart on his shoulder, there was Keith crying, you know, as he did, and he cried. He cried about his children. He's a very emotional man, and I loved him for that. So I say farewell, Christopher Keith. Helen and I are very pleased to have called you our friend.
And here's another short one. Today, I have the privilege of speaking on behalf of the Manicaland community of yesteryear. A community of farmers, families, friends, neighbors, and colleagues who shared not only a place, but a way of life. We were bound together by the rhythm of the seasons, our love of the land, our friendships, and an unspoken understanding that we would always be there for one another. We were privileged to know Keith, not simply as an auctioneer or a businessman, but as one of our own. Across what is now 5 generations, the Holland name has become part of the fabric of the province. Serving its farming communities, businesses and families with unwavering commitment, Keith inherited that remarkable legacy enriched it through his own life, and in turn passes it on to those who follow. While Keith was a farmer in his own right for a while, it was through the Holland family auctioneering business that he made an enduring contribution to generations of farming families. The Holland name is woven into the agricultural fabric of Manicaland, connecting livestock producers, farmers, and businesses in rural communities through decades of changing seasons and changing times. For many of us, cattle sales were never simply about buying and selling stock. They were woven into the rhythm of life in Manicaland. They carried the smell of dust rising behind herds of cattle, the crack of a stock whip, the shrill whistle of the herdsman, and the low, anxious bellow of the cattle. And after the sale, the smell of boerewors rolls, the pop of beers opened, and the familiar sound of laughter as friends greeted one another. They were places where news was exchanged, advice freely given, stories shared, friendships renewed, where their well-known characters of our farming community gathered, each adding another thread to the rich tapestry of our lives. It was here that lifelong friendships were forged, young farmers learned from older hands, and communities found strength in one another. Many of those familiar sale rings have long fallen silent. Many of the great cattle ranches that shaped the character of Manicaland are no more, and gone with them a way of life that had been built over generations. Yet the friendships, the values, and the spirit of that community have endured. They live in on those who shared the life and in the memories we carry with us today. Keith understood this world instinctively because it was his world. He knew that every beast entering the sale ring represented far more than cattle. It represented months of hope, years of hard work, a family's future, and often a lifetime's commitment to the land. He never lost sight of the people behind the cattle. Perhaps that is why Keith became to mean so much to so many. Through years of change, uncertainty, and loss, he remained a familiar face, a trusted voice, and a steadfast friend. He had helped preserve not only family businesses, but also the spirit of a community that refused to lose its identity. Following in the footsteps of the Holland men who came before him, Keith carried forward a tradition built on trust, fairness, and respect. Farmers knew when they dealt with Keith, they were dealing with a man whose word could be relied upon and whose commitment to the farming community was genuine. Keith's contribution, however, extended far beyond the sale ring. Through estate agency, household disposal sales, equipment auctions, and his involvement in business and community life, he became a familiar and trusted figure throughout Manicaland. Whatever the task, Keith approached it with the same integrity, practical wisdom, and genuine concern for people. As been mentioned before, Keith was not a man given to unnecessary words. He had a brisk, direct manner and an uncanny ability to cut straight to the center of any matter. He valued honesty, clarity, and common sense, and people respected him for it. There was never any pretense with Keith. He spoke plainly, stood by his convictions, and approached life with a refreshing authenticity. Yet those who knew him well also knew the other side of Keith. Alongside that directness was a warmth and a charm that drew people to him. He had the remarkable ability to make people feel valued, whether they were lifelong friends, fellow farmers, young stockmen tending their first sale, or complete strangers. He took a genuine interest in people. His quick wit, sense of humor, and generosity of spirit created friendships that have endured for decades. Many of us will remember not only what Keith did, but how he made us feel. He made people feel welcome, respected, and included. It's one of life's greatest gifts, and one that Keith shared so naturally. He believed in giving back. He served his community through committees, enjoyed the camaraderie of golf, be it that it might not have been good golf, tennis and cricket, and in later years continued to support those organizations as a respected patron. His judgment was widely valued, and he represented Manicaland with distinction on a number of corporate boards. Whatever the role, he served quietly, generously, and without seeking recognition. He knew that communities flourish not through individual effort alone, but through the people standing together, supporting one another through both prosperous and difficult times. Through his work, his service, and his friendships, he helped strengthen those bonds throughout Manicaland. The measure of a life is not found in the titles held, businesses built, or achievements accumulated. It's found in the lives we touch, the friendships we cherish, the trust we earn, and the difference we make in communities. Keith was one of those people. Long after the dust has settled on the sale ring, long after the cattle no longer graze the ranches, and long after the voices have faded, his influence will remain in the lives of those he served, the friendships he created, and the communities he helped. His legacy lives in the Holland family, in the generations of farmers and friends whose lives he enriched, and in the value he lived every day: integrity, loyalty, kindness, humor, and a steadfast commitment to others. We celebrate Keith's life today, but we know we do not stand alone. Across different shores, under different skies, and in a different light, countless Manicas celebrate his life with us. Though separated by distance, we are united in our memories, our friendship, and our gratitude for a man who meant so much to so many. On behalf of the Manicaland farming community of both yesteryear and today, thank you, Keith, for your friendship, your wisdom, your unwavering support, and for making our lives richer simply by being a part of them. To Bridget, Benj, Emma, and your families, we hold you close in our hearts today. Thank you for sharing Keith with us. His life enriched ours. His friendship strengthened us. And his memory will remain with us always. Farewell, Christopher Keith. You have left this world a better place than you found it.
When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms. Slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
Yeah, I know if Keith was with us, he would now be uncontrollably twitching on his seat. But I just have to say a few thank yous. You know, what you've all said, what wonderful tributes. Benj, so special. Ems, what a beautiful poem. Mike, yeah, you were such a good friend of Keith's, and thank you. And Susie, as you said, Keith got it right. He knew what was important, and we loved him for that. So it's time really to wrap this up. I know Keith's probably now giving the angels a hard time, and I think probably a few sparks with his cousin Nigel. But we're going to finish with a blessing chosen by Bridget. As you know, Keith was very proud of his Irish heritage and his Irish passport. Tongue in cheek. So, for Keith, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you all for coming. And, we're all the poorer for knowing Keith, but we're the richer for what he has left with us, and always will. Please, will you all not rush off, but come and join the family. There are some tremendous celebrations, some tremendous snacks and refreshments up there. And before we finish finally, Emma would like to say her thank yous.
Hi again, I will keep this very short. Mum has asked me to say a few grateful thank yous on her behalf. To Garda, Andrew and Marcy, thank you for all your unconditional help and wonderful support in Joburg whilst Dad was having all his treatments, and for opening your peaceful homes to us for months on end. To Benji, Olga, Emma, it's me, Bugs and their families for always being by our sides with love and care and holding us up in trying times. Dad was incredibly proud of you and adored you all. To our family everywhere for the beautiful messages, calls and visits throughout this long journey. They helped Mum more than you can imagine. To the Hollands office family, thank you all for keeping things afloat at the office while Mum and Dad tried to deal with all. They so appreciated it. To Ndina and Mishek, who kept their home and garden for months on end while they were away in Johannesburg. To Rolf, Sister Jana and medical staff at Morambi Clinic for always being there for them medically. And lastly but not least, sorry, I thought I would not cry this time, to our special friends here in Zimbabwe and all over the world, and our amazing Mutare community, thank you for what you've done for Mum and Dad and all the happy days living in this very kind little town. Thank you.
Good. You're looking.
We now bring this stream to a close. Thank you for joining us today from wherever you are in the world. Your presence, even remotely, was a source of comfort and strength for the bereaved family. As we conclude, we honor a life lived fully, a spirit that touched so many, and a memory that will forever resonate in our hearts. The family deeply appreciates your support, your love, and the kindness you have shown during this difficult time. If you'd like to leave a personal memory or message of condolence, please find the dedicated tribute section below the stream. Your words will be a cherished keepsake for the family. On behalf of Muzukuru Funeral Streaming, we thank you once more for connecting with the family today.